Good afternoon, guys. Thank you for joining me. Um, a couple things I want to discuss. The first thing I want to discuss is that I want to give my appreciation. Well, before I discuss anything, I want to give my appreciation for all the backers of the community REIT, the people that have supported us since we started talking about this. We apologize, or I apologize, first of all, by not being more expeditious. But I had to do a lot of analysis to evaluate how this thing would work. Okay. Um, and even the podcast, for years now, people have been asking me to do a podcast. And I just finally decided to do it. Um, but it had to be tied to something that I was doing. So for many, the community REIT is something that they've been waiting on for a long time. But at the same time, it is in coalescence with the business we were talking about here. All of this is birthed from an idea and a perspective that was given to me from my community that is on TikTok. And I took that favor that I had with them and would take the opportunity to build a company. That company is the community REIT. And so if you give me a minute, I'm going to read some of the things that I wrote for my book, because many of you know that I have a book coming out probably the first of the year called From Poverty to Purpose. Okay. It is my life story from, I go ahead and say, a poor neighborhood. I tell people all the time I didn't grow up poor, so I don't tell that story. But I eventually did make myself poor by my love of money. Okay. And I don't mean the story of the love of money is the root of all evil. What I mean is that when you forget God in your pursuit of what you identify as your purpose, you lose track of who you are. Okay. Because whatever you build with God has to be sustained by Him. Okay. You can't sustain it yourself if you build it with God. So I'm going to read something from the last chapter of my book called Manifest Destiny. And it's a bunch of idealisms and concepts. So don't be angry at me because I'm finishing the last chapter. And it may not sound like you wanted to sound. Why write this book? Posing a rhetorical question. Past the fact that I respect myself in the eyes of my ancestors, to continue this facade would be a slight and a greater diminisher of the expectations of their sacrifice on my part. To continue to seek entree in a society that does not accept me is a fool's errand, and I'm not a fool. This book is the attempt to frame the world as it really is for Black people, past the religion, entertainment that subsidizes us emotionally. The second part would be the inference. Black people serve one purpose in the manifest destiny called the U.S. or United States, as a consistent revenue stream to help leverage the asset value of the U.S. I strongly suggest that we quietly but strategically remove our interests from this investment and make this investment a sub-economy that's specific, concise, and fundamental. In my studies, I've identified that very viable and subsidized community has a sub-economy system that, though other cultures are involved, benefits the specific culture of the subculture and is not isolated to one or two gatekeepers. This allows self-actuation and the opportunity for individuals to manifest their own realities. By provoking VPs of banking to seek Black investment for their own banks, oil and gas executives to seek investments for their own obligations, grocery executives to seek investment to establish grocery store chains. And not just for Black people, but as a strong basis for residual assets that create value in America and eventually the world. I call it Black Manifest Destiny. Let's for dismiss the fact that, well, let me say this, let me go back. Let's refrain from the dismissal of art of war. See, Black people live in the psychosis induced by um, persistence of negating reality. The reality says that white comfort is peace. It's not, because of their manifest destiny, they're always in war mode. And even though it may seem predominantly via intimidation, violence, it's mainly through silent sanctions, redistricting, and circular reasoning. We must be cautious of these methods and silently but aggressively implementing disengagement policy, idealizing investment with our own money, and stop looking for others to uh, remove intentional barriers. The revenue will come from our own pockets. The ushering in will derive from Black innovators in our own community that seek out startups that are framed to suit Black investors. No law against who you choose to start a company with, and allow other communities the opportunity to invest and establish. I apologize for the way that was read, but there's a lot of information in there to unpack. Essentially, what's said is this: there's no blame for anybody. Okay, there's no blame for anybody, and if there was any blame, nobody would pick it up anyway. Okay, um, the community read is one of those concepts I discussed. The concept that comes out of our own pockets that we invest in one another. And see, uh, a lot of that has been seen as, okay, this guy has a corner store, this guy has this, that, and the other. Okay, that's not what I'm talking about. That is not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about looks more like the Asian community. You know, it may seem scattered, but there's a reason there is an Asian hair store or an Asian grocery store or an Asian on every corner. Remember what I just stated. I mean, on every corner. If it's on every corner, what does that mean? It's strategic. Okay, it's the reason that Palestinians and Lebanese own all the gas stations, and now Indians, because it's strategic. Okay, you may think the backbone of the Indian community are doctors and engineers. It's not. It's hotels and motels, and it's these corner stores. Just like in the Jewish community, it's the grocery stores and the big grocery chains. Okay, so how do Black people become strategic like that? By understanding that they're in a war. It is because, and let me explain to you what this is. Manifest destiny is essentially the idea, perspective, and directive of the Western Anglo-Saxon community to essentially conquer the world. Okay. And again, this is not a story about slavery. This is a story about the idealism, the perspective, and the directive of Black people. Okay. And by doing this, they set this in motion. It says the 1800s, but it was set in motion far before that. It was set in motion in the 1400s. Okay. Um, Here's what we've always fallen for. The other day, I was watching a show about Black apologists for the Bible. Okay. And let me explain something to you. I talk a lot in Manifest Destiny, the last chapter of my book, about the truth. And I would say that even though Black people probably, or the Black community tells more the truth than anyone else, but that's because they don't have any choice. But can you imagine telling the truth but not living in it? More importantly, actually rejecting it. And as I write in the book, further as I write, I say that the Black community has so much trauma, undealt trauma, and they continue to pile trauma on themselves by religion. Okay, religion is the biggest negator to the truth. Secondly, it would be entertainment. We either entertain ourselves to death or we religious ourselves to death. Anything not to feel the pain of my reality. But the problem with not facing reality is it never goes away. And it only gets worse. I always contend to this because I was actually involved in the Katrina project, and I'm sure some of you saw the Katrina situation, and during this Netflix series, and you saw how Black Americans were treated. So when we apologize, whether it's through a scripture, through whatever it is, for the way that we treated, that is a level of psychosis. That is a level of psychological delineation of self or devaluing self. We make excuses. And even after we cry and we whine, we forget. We go right back into that psychosis mode. When I hear young people talk about slavery as if it was something that didn't affect them, it bothers me. When I hear pastors delineating thousands of scriptures and books and getting all these degrees and masters and PhDs in something that hasn't done anything for them, but negate their own truth. See, do you see the difference? When it comes to the Western community, it is manifest destiny. So if you ask yourself, why are white people always smiling? Why are they so happy? And why are they angry that I'm happy? Because they know you're not supposed to be. And we think it's fine to overcome. Well, in my book, the last chapter is about our manifest destiny. We've talked for years about scripture and is Jesus black and all this other stuff, but we never talk about a plan. And my book is about a plan for Black people to gain economic strength. And I know you guys are tired of hearing that. You're tired of, specifically young people, you are tired of, oh, this, that, and the other, but it's never a plan. It's always scattered dreams, never a plan. You know why it's not a plan? Because a plan is developed, a plan is scheduled, and a plan is actuated. A plan it has schedule. What does that mean? When do we invest? When do we move forward? In our community, we ask people for money, but it's not for an investment. It's for a booklet. It's for a pamphlet. It's for a symposium. Not a plan. And don't you find that strange that the Black community, in my existence, I've never seen a plan. You go to things and you say, I'm not going to give any money to it. Before you know it, you've given all your money to it, but still haven't received anything. Do you know that Charles Stanley's church is worth $1 billion? They say that Second Baptist in Houston is worth over $1 billion. There's no telling how much John Osteen's church is worth. Now, what does that mean? Some way, form, or fashion, that church, and it's just not John Osteen's church, trust me, is an asset. And I just don't mean a real estate asset. It is time, as I stated before, for us to stop conceptualizing concepts, dreams, and being entertained, but actuate a plan that will allow our community to develop. Okay. And in order to do that, we have to remove all of the hundreds of years of trauma that we suffered. That's the first thing you do. Okay. So the first thing you have to do is remove what is causing you trauma. What is causing Black people more trauma? Negating the truth, not dealing with the truth. So, Mr. Reed, how do you evaluate the truth? I'm glad you asked that question. How do you evaluate the truth? If you give me a moment, I'm going to give you some context. I'm going to give you some context. You guys have heard me this week talk a lot about correlation. Okay? I'm going to give you the identification of correlation. In order for something to be true, it has to correlate with something. It has to correlate with something. It has to line up with something that is already true. If you look at it in the sense that of construction or development, anything that's true is something that's straight or at a 40-degree angle, or 90-degree angle, or 45, right? Either way, it's true. That means anything that abuts that has to already also be true. And so we tend to think, Black people, that we can believe whatever without investigating it fully and knowing if it's true or false. And what do I mean by believing, trusting? You can't have trust without truth. In any form in our existence, you can't have trust without truth. So let me break this down and tell you guys what I wrote. Correlation to truth is extremely important to beliefs. That's the first thing. And this is all studied. I'm going to lay it out. Correlation to truth is extremely important to beliefs. In other words, you can't believe anything unless it abuts something else that is true. You can't just believe it because it feels good. You can't just believe it because it matches up with some weird ass thinking you have or what someone told you. It has to abut to something that's already true. As a belief, that successfully correlates with, well, let me go back and read the entirety of the thing. That sounds separated when it all goes together. Correlation to truth is extremely important to beliefs. As a belief, that successfully correlates with reality. Successfully correlates with what? Reality. In other words, it not only correlates with what is true, it correlates in an arena. It correlates in an arena. So wherever you are, it has to correlate with the arena. I contend that what Black people believe and exist in does not correlate with their reality. And I have said it and will continue to say it. And if it doesn't correlate with reality, it doesn't correlate with what God has done. Because the only person that's given truth to anything is God. So how can you believe in something that doesn't correlate with what God has made, his creation? Mathematics comes out of God. And it's how we prove something is true, or one way. But you say, I can believe whatever I want to believe. No, you can't. I'll continue. The philosophical distinction between correlation and causation is critical here. We're talking about the truth. The philosophical The philosophical distinction between correlation, which is what we're talking about, and causation. Okay, what is that really saying? The only way you really know it happens is if you have something that's happened before. The only way you really know it happens or happened is something's happened like that before. I mean, that's how you prove it. Causation. So the correlation and causation are critical here. As a mere correlation between a belief and the truth does not mean the belief was formed correctly. And some of you will say, well, Mr. Reed, that sounds very profound, and you seem very fired up about it. I am. Because that's the only way that I can actually prove to people that they can't believe whatever they want to believe. They have to believe what's true. You have to believe what's true. My book has a lot of things like this in it. This is the finality of the book, Manifest Destiny, where I put in here the Black Manifest Destiny, which the community REAP, which what you guys are watching right now, is a part of. It's a part of it. You're watching, what you're watching right now is a part of it. If you want to hear more about what I'm talking about and things like this, just go watch our podcast videos. We're on TikTok, and community REAP TikTok, and you guys can watch us here, and you can watch me live every night at 6:30. But you can't believe what you want to believe. When I hear these people arguing over stuff that doesn't benefit us, and let me be frank with you, I'm talking about the Bible, the Quran. None of that benefits Black people. You can find subjective and suggestive, positive suggestive information anywhere. Don't harm people, don't steal. Okay, how does that change my life? See, I'm going to tell you something. Without assets, you can't see. What does that mean, Mr. Reed? Without the ability to move from where you are, you'll never be able to see anything different. And in order to do so, it takes opportunity. Opportunity takes money. So the reason that many Black people's options are none or few is because they don't have the money within the collective group called African American that will allow them the type of opportunity and need for them to succeed, or required for them to succeed. I want to give the Black community an opportunity. That's all I can suggest. But in order to do that, we have to create our own sub-economy. And through that sub-economy, we'll work with the American economy and other economies in order to develop the Black American backbone. Now, we have to dissuade ourselves from the ridiculous thinking that there aren't separate cultures in America. That's BS. Everybody knows that. Try to go and work for an Indian company in America and watch what happens. Try to go and work for an Asian company in America and see what happens. Shit. It's getting to the point, try to go work for a Caucasian company. And I guarantee if you're working for a Mexican company, you are not getting a job. You're not. I've never seen anybody Black working for a Mexican company. Ever. Law firm, I don't care what it is. At least, so here's the thing about it. You guys say, well, Caucasian companies allow others to work for their company. Well, that's only to grasp or reach out to people that are like them. You ever notice the Black lawyers work with the Black clients? That's the only reason they do that. See, one of the things I respect about Westerners or white people is the fact that they understand business is business. But believe me, at one juncture, at one point, White people only hire white people. But you have to understand that's a foundational rule. That's what stabilized the white economy, them working with one another. That's why they own or still own 98% of the United States. Look it up. 98% of the United States is still owned by Caucasians. It's not about racism. It's not about separatism. It's about reality. And that's what my book is meant to get you guys to see. It shows you the framework of money, the framework of the system, the framework of your own framework, and come into the truth of who you are. The community REIT is more than just a group of investors that come together to give you an opportunity to invest in real estate. We are a philosophical truth teller. We're not here to talk about the Bible, even though we may use biblical phrases. We're not here to talk about religion. We're here to talk about the truth. And if you want the truth, keep watching us, keep following us, and be prepared to invest in us or to invest in yourselves. We plan on growing a company from simply thought to $3.7 billion in 7 years. If you want to be a part of that, continue to join us, continue to listen, continue to follow. I know that people have had some issues with Black real estate. I get it. We're not asking you to trust us because that's not true. See, if you trust me and you just went by just listening to me, then that's emotion. Never trust emotion. Allow people to prove themselves. Allow people to prove themselves. I told you guys initially I had 10,000 people ready to give me almost $2 million. I didn't take that money because we weren't ready. Anybody who takes your money just to hold your money, never invest in that. But I have a timeline. The timeline is abruptly and expeditiously arising, but I'm not concerned. I'm not concerned at all. I'm focused. So I look forward to talking to you guys every day from now on until we develop that trust relationship. And any questions you have or any things you like to see us discuss or me discuss on a live or even on a podcast, leave it in the inbox. Let me know. Sorry about that. And we'll attempt to address it. All right, guys. Thank you and have a lovely day. Stay focused and make money.